Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Dirt and the Divine. This is the podcast where we say what needs to be said. I am so excited today to have our guest, Sandy O'Shea. She is a client, a friend, and a fellow astral traveler. Amazing woman. And we are gonna get juicy here today, talking about some really amazing things. Sandy, hi, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks,
Can't wait
Krisha.
for this
Thanks so much.
conversation. You're welcome. You're welcome. Look at us. We've got like this. If you're on video with us right now, we have like this mysterious smile and sparkly eyes because we know what's
Uh-huh.
coming. Sandy, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you start by just sharing, a little bit about your story, how you ended up where you are, and then we will just get juicy from there.
All right. So I guess I was in my mid to late 30s, and I was at a point where I was really fat, really unhealthy, really unhappy, had lost all interest in sex. Orgasms, I was still about the orgasms, but it was like, just get me off, get me going, and I'm done. But to actually have sex with my husband,
Right.
it was just too long drawn out, and I was done. Like, I just mentally I wasn't into it, and it had nothing to do with him. It was all, as it turned out, I had a really bad hormonal imbalance. So that's a big part of why I kind of lost my interest in sex at the time.
Right.
Plus, I was under an awful lot of stress, and stress is a huge killer.
It really is. Yeah.
So this went on for, I don't know, 8-9 years.
Yeah.
And when you're in your early 30s and mid 30s when this starts, this is not a good thing. So kind of fast forward 10 years later, ended up going to a massage therapist who was also a health and life coach. He sent me to a clinical nutritionist who sent me for a bunch of blood work and tests and asked me 9 million questions. Long story short, turned out, yes, this is what the challenges were. It was low progesterone, and my DHEA level was tanked, and that is actually a precursor to estrogen and testosterone.
Yep.
So, and those are your sex drivers. Estrogen and testosterone are, for both men and women, or for women especially, those are your big sex drivers.
Yeah.
So because I was 46 and they were the levels of like a 64-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah. So no wonder I had kind of lost interest in sex.
Yeah.
So anyway, we worked together. I got back on track. He had such a huge influence on my life that he really inspired me to want to get back into my passion, which is helping people.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, blah, blah, blah. So, and then about, what was it, a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I was on my way to an event with a girlfriend of mine, and we didn't know each other exceptionally well. And I looked at her and I kind of went, I don't think I want to be married anymore, and burst into tears.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of almost a year of battling with myself.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out what it was that I wanted out of life. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm such a terrible person. I'm going to blow this man's life up. He's in this nice, cozy little, we'd been married for, I guess, 22 years at that point. Together for 27. He's in this nice little comfort zone. We have this, it wasn't a bad relationship. It was a good marriage. It was a good relationship. Sex was good, but I felt stifled, and I felt like my wings were clipped, and I felt like I wasn't me anymore. So finally, by Christmas 2019, I just before that, I had decided, yes, I need to get out for both our sakes. I need to get out, because that resentment was just starting to creep in, and I always said I was never going to go down that route.
Right.
So I told him on January 2nd, 2020, and he's like, yeah, he says, we've kind of been drifting for the last couple of years. And I'm like, wait a minute. He's supposed to be really upset about this.
Right.
And I'm like,
What?
I mean, he was upset, but he understood.
Your ego didn't like that.
No, my ego's sitting there kind of going, what the fuck?
Why are you not throwing plates right now?
Aren't you begging me to stay? Why aren't you, anyway, so, but I'm glad that he had the reaction that he did. And we're still good friends. Everything's very amicable, the whole bit.
Yeah.
So fast forward a few months later, I've moved up to Lindsay from Ajax. I'm on my own. And then something happened and it was just like, damn, I just didn't feel like me anymore. And I couldn't get my butt in gear for my business. It had taken a dive. And, this is all through COVID too, right?
Right.
That, we sold the house, got the apartments, got my truck, moved, the whole shebang was during this. And I'm a people person like you, right?
Yeah.
I need to hug. I need to see people and look in their face.
Yep.
So, and then I remember I had approached you, and this is how, we kind of really connected. I mean, we've known each other for a few years.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there like this.
Yeah, with your hand over your mouth.
Yep.
And nose. Yep.
And it was like, and I felt stifled. I had lost my voice.
Yeah.
And we started working together and kind of worked through a whole whack of shit.
Yeah, we did.
And one of the things that, one of the reasons why my thing is sex and hormones.
Yep.
And because I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, didn't enjoy it. And now I'm kind of on the other side and I want to help people and make them feel better. Right.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that I had to go through. One of the things I got to go through is dealing with a lot of sexual. See, I always thought that I didn't have it that bad. A lot of kids have been sexually abused. A lot of, girls have been raped. There's been a lot of major trauma.
Yeah.
I didn't have major trauma.
Yeah.
So I always kind of pushed it away and I'm like, well, my life wasn't that bad. I grew up in a middle-class home. My dad was on the road most of my life. But when I don't know when it started. I know, well, probably when I started getting boobs, which was 9 years old.
Right.
I was in a training bra at 9. So there was a couple of years there whenever he left.
Training bra. Sorry.
Sorry?
What an awful word, training bra.
I know, right?
What?
It was just one of the, a lot of women wear them.
Yeah.
That type of thing, because it was a little less structured.
Yeah.
But
I know what it is. It's just feels like we're going to train you. What?
I know.
No.
It's kind of crazy. But so that's what they called it back then. I don't think they call it that now. But
right.
Way back then.
Back in the days.
Back in the day. That was a long time ago, man. But he would, before he left for his trip for the week, he would come to say goodbye to me and I'd be in bed. And he would, put his hand on my boob and give it a good little shake. And I didn't know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
I was 8, 9 years old.
Yeah.
And I was a mature kid for my age.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just, and I knew it was wrong. And I finally put a stop to it. And he stopped. When I told him to stop, he did. And, I had a brother-in-law who I had stayed with my sister and her husband and family. And I woke up one day and I think I was 7. I think it was 7. And I woke up in the middle of the night to a lot of fur, hair. And he had placed my hand on his genitals. And he's like, this is just our secret. So, and then these little things kind of crept in. And then because I was so mature for my age, like at 13, I was a 36 double D. That's a lot to handle for a 13-year-old. And especially when older guys were coming on to me. I lost my virginity when I was 13 to a 16-year-old. It was down by the lake. And yet I still have fond memories of the lake. But I mean, it was totally consensual. Like I wanted to, but I felt pressure to do it. And then it was kind of like, oh, wait a minute. I found this weapon.
Right.
I could use sex to get what I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of this, but this is the 13-year-old brain.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
There's no shame in it. It's
no.
like, it's just what happened, right?
It happened. And, but that continued right into my 20s. That was my attitude of, hey, this is a weapon because I can get lots of attention this way.
Right.
I had big boobs. I was actually fairly fit back then. And it was like, it was just so easy to get the attention of men. And that's what I craved. And it was really important to me back then. I mean, I still enjoy it. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, but it's been really interesting over the last little bit because even my attire has changed since I've moved up here. And I've gone from kind of being more, from being more in your face about things to classy sexy is kind of the term. And that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
I'm almost 56 years old. It's like, I don't need to be, get the boobs right up in front of your face and, get the super short skirt and the whole bit. And for those who could, I totally could. Yep. And I still have stuff that I could do that with if I wanted. Yep. But it's like, I'm in a new town and, but I don't feel the need. I think that's the thing. I don't feel the need to do that anymore. I don't feel the need to be so in your face in order to get the attention because I'm a lot more confident.
Right. Yeah.
I know who I am.
Yeah.
And it's like, and
you don't need to prove yourself anymore.
No. And it's really, really cool. So it's been an interesting journey, and the last year has been very interesting on so many levels.
There's been so much growth for you in the last year, and it's been like amazing to witness. And it's an accepting and a maturing into yourself, right? And some people do this at 25, some people do this at 67, some people do it at 42, like there's no real sort of age that this happens. It's just whenever you get the call, right? And thank you for sharing all of that. And I know that part of that story is painful still because it's just, it's that violation, right? And so many women have that, and men too. Like men struggle with this as well, right? That's just not talked about enough.
No.
And so we hold space here for both of that. But what I love about, and we haven't got here yet, but what I love about your story, because I know it already, is how you have taken this and you've turned it into something like you did mention this, that is helping people, right?
Yep.
And I mean, if we look at the cupboard behind you, you got a whole store there. And if you're on audio, come over to the video on YouTube and you'll see that Sandy has a whole store of gorgeous, fun toys, adult toys to play with. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, like, there's so many things I want to pull down here from what you were just saying. But before I go there, I want to, let's just talk sex with Sandy. I mean, that's what your whole thing is, right? So let's talk about sex for a little bit. Like, what do you want to say about it? Like, let's open that conversation,
You know what? Sex it's getting better. But it's been in the closet for so long, and there's been so much shame about it. It's like, oh, you shouldn't dress like that.
collectively.
Yeah,
You mean.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you shouldn't dress like that.
Yeah.
If you've got a low cut top on, well, you're being slutty. If you've
Right.
got a super short skirt on, oh, you're being slutty.
Yeah.
What
I'm
the
such a
hell is the
slut
matter
right
with
now.
what is wrong with being a slut?
Right.
If you, and it's like, it's turning that term that has been used as such a negative for so long,
Yeah.
and kind of owning it, turning it on its head,
Yep.
and kind of going, no, you know what? Yeah, I love sex.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be with one person. Doesn't
Yeah.
even have to be with one person at a time. But I love sex. Am I a slut? You're fucking right, I am. And I
Yeah.
own it and I love it. And it's
Yeah.
like, you know, I don't expect, here's the thing, not everybody has to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Some people are innately more sexual and more open and more free. And that's great.
Yeah.
If you're not, that's okay.
That's okay too.
It's okay. I remember when I was, when I started my business, it was more hormones.
Yeah.
And then I started, and through a series of events and conversations and stuff, I started getting this pull, this call to talk more about sex than I did hormones.
Yeah.
Because there's a ton of people who talk hormones.
Yeah. There's not a lot of people that are talking about sex.
No.
Not in a healthy way.
Not in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And, it's something that I want to help people understand, that sex is important, not just in your 20s or 30s. It's important in your 70s and 80s.
Yep.
And everything in between.
Yep.
I remember I used to work at a health food store. Well, we used to see each other at the health store.
That's right. Yeah.
And, I had a couple of there was one older couple, I think they were in their early 80s. And they came in one day and she's like, have you got anything to help him?
Nice.
It's like, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, I want to be like you.
Yeah. I often say, like, if I'm going to die, wow, that's interesting. If I'm going to die.
No, when you're going to die.
I don't know. I'm like, if I'm going to die,
yeah.
I either want it to be like, I'm jumping out of an airplane and like something, like I'm doing something amazing.
Right.
Or I'm like in the middle of sex, like poor guy, right? But like the poor guy, he's like, oh my God, I killed her. But I'm like, yeah.
One last final amazing orgasm. Yeah. Yeah.
I love having sex. And, I share a similar story in terms of, being such a slut in high school, quote unquote, having like, situations happen as a child that made sex shameful for me, or that was the narrative, that was the story.
Yeah.
Discovering that, oh wait, I'm actually a horn dog and I like it a lot in high school, but not having the boundaries, not having the self-esteem, not having the self-worth, right? And so it was like any guy anywhere. And of course that gave me a reputation, you know what I mean? It was like 5 foot fuck all was my nickname. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you guys are mean, but I love them still, and it's okay. We were all fucked up at that time, not fucked up, but we were all like teenagers, right? And then like it was like, okay, mute from the time I was 16 until I was almost 40. And there was sex in between, obviously.
Right.
Have 2 children, but it wasn't sex.
Yeah.
It wasn't sex.
Right.
And it took a while as well for me to go, okay, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to love on it and work through the shame and work through that messaging and pour all of that self-love in order to be able to then have that conversation even and open up the ability to be able to have sex and intimacy first with like ourselves, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then with the partner, and then like eradicating that charge around that word slut. Yeah. The shame around it, you know?
Yep. No, it's kind of, I feel like my mission in life is to get people talking. Yeah. And it's like, and I love when people, I was at a workshop one day, And of course, I introduce myself and what I do. And of course, that always, whenever I'm in a group setting and the topic comes up, it creates quite a little buzz.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the girls was telling me that, I can't even remember the circumstances, but she ended up talking to her girlfriend, and her girlfriend, who was in her probably 40s, had never masturbated.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of women like that out there.
And I'm like, okay, something's got to be done about this.
Yeah.
Because masturbation is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You start touching yourself in the womb sometimes.
Yeah.
Babies touch themselves. They don't know that they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So they're touching, they're feeling. It's like they're exploring and learning their bodies. And the same thing with little kids.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation with someone about, and actually it started with my sex toy supplier, that it's like, oh no, it was actually a customer who has a daughter who's 11 years old. And it's like, I don't want her to know anything about this. And it's like, and then I told him, and then he's like, no, this is about the time that you start talking to them about this. And this is going to be one of my this is going to be a hot topic about talking to your kids about talking to your daughters about masturbation and using toys.
Oh, yes.
As a teenager. And it's kind of like, well, where do you want them to find out about masturbation and sex?
Right.
Yep. Do you want to be the one to be supplying the information properly? Or do you want them to learn about it from their peers and from...
They're on porn.
Exactly. And it's so unrealistic.
It's so unrealistic.
It's a movie. Yeah. It's a mini movie. And there are
even the homegrown stuff.
And it's like, please.
Yeah.
So, get out of your comfort zone. You need to talk, and this all started from the fact that I was at I was a vendor at a wedding show a couple of years back. And I only had a 4-foot table, which is not very big at all.
Right.
So I had out the sex toys, and that's all I had out was the sex toys. Right. And I didn't think that there was going to be kids there. There was a baby, there was a 2-year-old, they were not a big deal, right? But then there was this girl who was probably 11 or 12. And the women who were there's about 4 or 5 of them. And they did everything in their power to keep her from coming anywhere close to my table.
Yeah. Yep.
They didn't know me.
Yeah.
They didn't know that all I would say is, this isn't something that you need to worry about right now. This is stuff for adults.
Yeah.
And you can talk to your mom about it later.
Yeah.
And it's like, but the more they tried to block her, the harder she tried to get it.
Yeah.
And this is a human thing, right? Not just kids, but humans. Yeah. It's like the more you say no, the more they want to do it.
The more we want it.
Exactly.
So, don't tell us no.
Right.
Especially the rebels.
Right. Especially
the rebels and the black sheep. We're just like, no, you cannot tell us no. I want to know what those dildos are. Right? What are those things? And this is such a fascinating conversation because there is this like collective like naughtiness or badness or somethingness around sex and dildos and porn and all of that. And it's because we are collectively in the shadow.
Yeah.
And so if we were in the light side of sex and sexuality, which we're not.
No.
Right? That's why there's so much negative around it, because people are in their shadow. And so it's that shame. It's the shame piece around it, right? That we've been conditioned that kids are too young to be exposed to something like that, right? Wait, why? Like, yes, there is a violation, which we spoke about earlier. Mm-hmm. There's a violation that's a line.
Yeah.
Right? That is, again, in the shadow, that should not be crossed.
No.
However, this is such a sensitive and big subject.
Yep.
Okay. So when I was a little girl, I'm going to talk about my child experience. Okay. In terms of the positive, in terms of sex,
Right.
there was always so much curiosity about it. Okay. And I always found women's bodies fascinating.
Right.
And I'm not going to say where, but there were magazines and, you know, like Playboy or whatever. And it used to be something that I would look like somebody who I knew in my sphere had these, and I'm not going to say who or where or whatever. And then I would look at them and I'm like, ooh, this is kind of interesting. Like this is a vagina and boobs and it's a woman. And I never felt weird about it. I was always like, I'm so curious about this. What is this? Right. And not, and like my hands would always be on my vagina, on my pussy. And it's like, that's where I felt so secure. And I still do that as an adult to this day. This is very natural for us to have that touch connectivity to our body, to our genitals, to ourselves, right? It's protection. It's the same for me. It's the same. Putting my hand on my pussy is the same energy and vibration as putting my hand on my heart. Right. And it's so healthy. And I really do agree with you in terms of having open discussions with our teens, preteens, things like that about masturbation, because it is the direct conduit to self-love. It is the direct conduit to having a voice. You know, I've interviewed or had conversations with many women on this podcast so far. And one of the things that we talk about when we're talking about sex and owning your sexuality and, you know, removing the shame and all of that is how much that owning our own bodies, owning our own sexuality opens up our third chakra and allows us to be able to speak our truth. And it doesn't have to be about sex. Like our truth is just our truth, right?
Exactly.
And because the energy, the sexual energy is life force energy, right? And so that's the energy of the universe. And so when we have shut that side of us down because of shame, we have now shut off our source, like our a connection to source in a way. And we lose the ability to be able to speak truth. And so I find like there's so much in this. It's not just having an orgasm or having sex. It is way bigger than that, way wider than that. And if we can teach our teenagers how to masturbate properly, not like properly.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean? Like how to pleasure themselves. Imagine now this girl, if I were a teenager and I knew how to masturbate and touch myself and love myself, I probably would not have gone with any dude.
Exactly.
Right? I would have had a very different view on it, still been active, but in a different kind of way, had more self-worth around it, and a fuck ton more pleasure out of it. Cause I would have been like, yeah, no, to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left.
Exactly.
Harder, harder, harder. Just fuck it, I'll do it.
You know what? It is amazing. And here's part of the other kind of side of things. Men are generally speaking, they're just fine with masturbation. However, when it comes to pleasuring a woman, they need help.
And they can only get that help from us. And we can only help them if we know what we want.
Exactly.
Sorry, I took the words out of your mouth. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Who cares who says it, as long as it's said. Because it all starts with women. Let's face it. And sex is way more about women than it is about men. Like, way more.
How so?
Because we got so many places to have fun with.
That's right. We are built for pleasure.
Right?
How many nerve endings does the clitoris have?
8,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, and I mean, there's the clit. There's, you know, just there's the G spot. There's nipples. There's
elbows.
there's so many things, whereas guys are a lot more localized, just pretty much to the genital area and to the anus as well.
Yep.
And it was so funny because the first time I had a guy ask me to stick my finger in his ass, I'm like, this was my pre-enlightened days.
Right.
I was very uncomfortable, and I thought he was, do you have gay tendencies?
Right.
And it's like, no,
Yeah.
it's because there's a lot of nerve endings in the anus.
There are, yeah.
And it's like, that's why anal sex is mind-blowing. But there are rules with anal sex.
There are rules. Yeah.
There are rules, and there's a lot of prep that needs to be done. So it's not as
just
easy.
Like, bam. Wait.
Oh, that happened one time, and it was just like I saw stars because I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah,
it was like, you kind of get into a rhythm, and then it slid out and back in the wrong place, and it was just like, oh!
Yeah.
that was my, I think was that my first experience with it? Yeah, no wonder I had a little bit of a hesitation to do it again. But
yeah, right.
Anyway, but no, and it's so it starts with us. So we females need to learn how to be comfortable with ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to learn, as you were saying, we need to learn to love ourselves physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually. And then we can teach the guys. The problem is when it's a bunch of teenagers who are having sex together for the first time. I don't mean a bunch of teenagers at the same time.
Yeah.
We're not talking orgies here. We're talking into, couples. And the problem is that if the girl is not comfortable, if the girl doesn't understand what it is that she needs, she can't teach the guy.
Yeah.
And then the guy doesn't get taught. And then he just kind of goes along, and it's this circle where things just aren't working well. And then you get into adulthood, and no wonder there's so many freaking unsatisfied women out there.
Yeah, and
so many women who just can't be bothered.
And men too. Like it's not satisfying for them either.
No, and like blowjobs. Oh my God. Like that is one of their biggest pleasures.
Yeah. And
for some guys, they're more about the oral sex than they are about vaginal sex.
Right.
Because it's so relaxing for them. Right. But it isn't, it's like, not women don't necessarily know how to give a good blowjob.
Yeah.
So communication. So this is my big thing that I harp on an awful lot, is you got to talk to your partner.
Yes.
But first you've got to be comfortable in yourself and have your own voice in order to communicate with your partner.
Yep. So
that you're both receiving a lot of pleasure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can.
Yeah. No. You're totally right. Like my friend and colleague Maria Diaz and I did a show. We have a show on Clubhouse on Sunday nights, and it's Sex with Soul. And we talked about this, like, and even in the podcast that we did, I think, and this is what I was sharing just before, if you cannot express yourself,
backward.
Like you need, sorry, let me rewind that a little bit. You need to know what you want. And what turns you on. You need to know your own erogenous zones. And the only way that you can find that out is by touching yourself.
Yes.
That's it. Like, you know the map of your own body, right? And so this is just like being in service to yourself, right? And then when you have a partner, if you choose to, you can then confidently speak that to the partner, because you're like, it's already something that like you know what you like, you know what you don't like. You can just be more confident in like, okay, I'm not loving this. I would like to have that. And I mean, this opens up the whole conversation around like just relationships in general and all that, which is a whole other episode. But
oh yeah.
Yeah. I love this conversation. I think this is so important to, I think what this has done is just opened up that Pandora's box of, all right, We've talked about everything here. We've talked about anal sex. We've talked about masturbation. We've talked about, having a big, having like, honest conversations with our teen girls.
Yep.
But even like women in general, like even adult women or whatever, like there's so many adult women who, could be in their 40s or 50s or whatever, and never had that permission. But there is that thing inside of them where they're like, I really want to do this. I really want to be having sex. I really want to be feeling that pleasure. But I don't know how to go about doing it. I don't know where to start even. Right. And, a bunch of dildos on the table would probably be like for that, right? So let's I would love for you to, let's imagine that we have a spectrum of people on this, listening to this or watching this, right?
Yep.
What would you say to the woman who's there? Like, a lifetime of shame, but she's got that thing, or even a man or whatever, it doesn't matter, but a human who's got that thing. And it's like, I really want to explore this,
right,
but I don't know where to start. And a table full of dildos is way beyond my capacity right now. So where would you, I know where I would start with somebody like that, but I would love to know where you would start with somebody with that.
I'd have a good conversation with them and find out what it is, kind of what their experiences have been like.
Right.
Find out where their head is at.
Right.
And my recommendation is always, like, if you are not familiar with masturbation, that's where you start.
Yeah.
Find out what makes you orgasm. Some people don't even know when they have one.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole topic of squirting.
Right. Waterfalling.
Uh-huh.
Waterfalling. We call
Is that what it is?
But I'm renaming it from squirting to waterfalling.
Thank you. But yeah, I the first time that happened to me, I'm like,
what is happening?
What? So I called my husband and I'm like, nice. What happened? And he goes, honey, that was squirting. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Cool.
Because that was the first time that happened. It was just, we had been fooling around and I was like super aroused, and he went to work and I grabbed one of my vibrator and off I went, and wow, anyway. Yeah. So it can be a little intimidating sometimes. Like it can be a little kind of like, holy shit, what the hell happened?
Right. Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with your body,
yeah.
So, there's a lot of conversation that goes on around sex.
Yeah.
And if somebody is interested in pursuing a toy or finding out how to, what they should do, it's a lot of conversations. Like, what's your experience? Or, if you don't have any, then here's something gentle to start you with. For somebody who's been into it for a long time, who has multiple things, then that's a completely different story.
That's a different thing, right? So it's
Absolutely.
taking it to the next level for you, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and there's so many, there are for like some next level, things to look at it, because this is the dirt and the divine, and this is with about spirituality, right?
Yeah.
We can now talk about tantra, and we can talk about the extended massive orgasm, and we can talk about like withholding your orgasm, so that like if you're you're good with orgasming, you're good with your body, you're good with all of that kind of stuff, right? Now you can take it to the realm that I like to play in, which is like, oh, now you've got this sexual energy, what that energy is, right? Like use it. It's sexual magic. It is the universe. It's the energy of the universe, right? And so this is where then you can take your orgasm and not actually like release it, like breathe it. Like I teach my clients how to breathe in that orgasm rather than releasing it, right? Breathe that energy into your body and let it just be there and soak it all up, right? Rather than having the complete release. And, there's so many erogenous zones on our body for men and women, and using that super light tantra, touch You can do lingam massages, you know, you can do like beautiful massages, genital massages or whatnot, right? Like really getting to the intimacy of like orgasm and sex and sexuality and all of that kind of stuff, right? So there's such a wide spectrum of where we can go with this,
Right.
no matter where you are, you know.
Absolutely.
And somebody who's never had it, like I had one of my clients in Feminine Rising, you know, is a virgin, and you know, in her like mid 30s, and she's like, I've never, like, she bought her first vibrator while working together, and I'm like, okay, and she's like, oh my God. I'm like, I know. It's so liberating.
Yeah.
Right. And, but we
totally
needed to work on a lot of the shame, and we needed to work on a lot of that stuff for her first before she could get there, which is exactly what you're saying. It's the communication, it's the talking, it's the, where are you at with that? Right.
Yeah,
and I love that you do that with women, you know, you have that conversation piece to allow them to kind of like ease in, peek around the corner, like, okay, it's not so bad. And when that shame piece comes up, you know, you are so beautifully equipped to hold space for that woman, because you know, you've been there.
Yeah.
You know, and even though you're fully expressed now, it doesn't mean you always were. And you know, like as you've said. And so I think that that compassion and that empathy and that container that you hold for people is so strong. And it's also like wild and fun how unapologetic you are about it, and just like, yeah, I'm gonna do a table full of dicks, like, yes. Like, I'm gonna have a table of dildos at a wedding thing. Yeah, because I love it and I believe in it that much. And that is gorgeous. That is the advocacy that we need in order to be able to shift the narrative around this. So I love you, and I love the work that you're doing, and I thank you so much for all of that. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you were to have one final sort of like message out there for the listeners, just at this time, whatever's coming through, what do you want to say?
Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a big one.
And don't be afraid to ask for what you want.
Yeah.
Like if you're with a partner, and whether it's a new partner or you've been together for a while, and I'll tell you, sometimes, like I thought I was open-minded before, and then I met this guy.
Right.
And he completely blew my mind.
Right.
So but it goes in stages.
Right.
You don't go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds flat.
Yeah.
Stay open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big thing, is to stay open-minded, to don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. If you have questions, there are no dumb questions. You want to find somebody that you are comfortable with to talk to, who has some knowledge. And even if because the problem with talking to girlfriends who are not kind of in this field, they have their own stories. Yeah. So you want to reach out to somebody like yourself or myself who understands this kind of thing and who can kind of walk you through it. So
yeah, because there's more of a professional container around this, and
exactly.
Like we have we don't bring our shit to the to the container. Yeah, you're right. It's a safe space, right? That is sought in this realm, and it's unconditional. Like there's nothing that's off limits for either one of us, you know, when it comes to the people who come in and work with us. It's like, okay, we love you anyway, right? Like let's get you feeling good. Let's get you feeling happy, and you know, whatever that looks like for you. And,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my God, Sandy, I could just like, well, okay, we're gonna do this done, because there's still more things. I have the notes here that I haven't even talked about. It's like we haven't even gone here, but it's okay because we went where we needed to go, and you know, we set the intention that this is what we were going to talk about today, and so here we are. I love you. Thank you so much for being here. And where can people find you?
I am at, my website is Let's Talk Sex with Sandy.
Okay.
My Facebook page is Let's Talk Sex with Sandy. I'm on Instagram at Let's Talk Sex with Sandy.
Nice.
No apostrophe. No apostrophe.
No apostrophe.
And
all the grammar nerds.
Exactly. And then my email is Sandy with a Y at letstalksexwithsandy.com.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Put all that in the show notes. Yeah.
So that's how you.
So basically, let's talk sex with Sandy, and
right.
Yeah, and we certainly did today.
It's funny, just as one quick last little thing. I was doing a lot of networking in Durham when I lived there pre-COVID. And it's like everybody out there is like, my nickname was the sex lady.
The sex lady. Yep.
Because that's my thing. I mean, that's my passion, and that's what I want to help people with. My purpose. So thank you again, my love, very much for having me. Thank you. Have an awesome day.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for watching, listening, participating in today's episode. As you can see, this is a very exciting topic for myself and for Sandy. And we would love to hear from you. What is your experience? Where are you at with this subject? Did this make you feel incredibly uncomfortable? Did it make you feel excited? Like, where are you on your spectrum? And there's no right or wrong with this. I used to have so much shame. I couldn't even look at people on regular TV kissing. It was very uncomfortable for me. And now I'm all about like, yeah, bring it on, baby. So if you have any questions or you want to reach out to Sandy or myself, you've got all of the links in the show notes. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching and for listening. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, Sandy.